What's the word, Chief?
Oh, hello there, friend. Welcome to my humble... Let's not give it the pretense here, this is just my channel, this is a bedroom, this definitely is not a tavern. So I've talked quite a bit about video games on my channel in the past, not as much as I've promised to, sorry about that, but it's something that I talk about quite a lot. What I've never really spoken about on here though is something that has also recently, if you can call recently, something I've been doing for the last 20 weeks, come back into my life, and that is pen and paper RPGs. Now don't get me wrong, I love computer-based RPGs. Probably a bit too much, I have so goddamn many, please send help. But these games, while expanding in their choices to give more player agency and freedom, they do lack the incredible vast expanse of possibility that tabletop can offer. The only thing is, I found sometimes when talking to my friends about this, it's this vast expanse of possibility that is, well, daunting. In a world where you can be anyone, anything, and at any standing, it's a pretty huge task to make a singular person that will be, essentially, you. But in amongst this entire vast possibility and probability and every other word ending in ability, do not worry. I'm here to try and help. I'm not going to go into any stats or mathematic-based shenanigans or any min-maxing or the like. This is partly because I feel that whenever you're making a character, you kind of already have an idea as to what class you want to play as, and the player handbook already tells you what you should really be putting your ability points into regards that. And also I feel that you shouldn't really cage yourself in with your ability scores when you're initially building a concept for a character. Although, admittedly, if you actually want to make your stats first and then make your character, that is actually also a completely viable shout. I just prefer to do the fluff side of things first because, well, I'm a simple man and I enjoy fluff. We're mostly just going to be talking about building a character concept, and I'm going to be using D&D as my basis because, well, I'm better versed in D&D, and that's what I've currently been playing. I am by no means an expert, and this is really rather subjective, but either way, I figured I would just share my process with you guys, and hopefully you might find it helpful, or at the very least, interesting. So, let's get into it. Okay, point number one just sounds so incredibly basic and simple, yeah? Well, that's because it is. So you've got your books, and you've been reading them, and you've got an idea of classes and races, and you know what's good at what, and you know where your stat points should go. And then you've been reading your books about books, and you got your books about books about books. I'm pretty certain they're a thing. Now you are ready to try and go hog wild and create this character with little to no direction. You're ready, you know what to do. Let me tell you, that is actually a lot harder than that sounds. So the best way to get at least a simple direction for your character is to talk to your DM about your campaign so you can get a gauge for what kind of campaign you're going to be playing. Your campaign might be some Arthurian tale of knights and monarchs, meaning that Warforged pirate you've had planned might stick out like a sore thumb, but maybe you actually want that. Or maybe it's the opposite and you're in the plains and you're surrounded by strange and bizarre races that Sir Graham of Parsley might get a little lost in. So, you should talk to your DM and get a feel for that world, and then get a feel for how your character might fit in that world. Even if they're from some far off place in relation to where your campaign is starting, at least you've got a gauge as to where the world is. And this is going to help you figure out whether you want your character to fit into the world, or maybe be something a little bit different. But Kieran, I thought we were making characters, and we are, and we will get the weirdly impatient person I've hypothesized, even though my audience 9 times out of 10 is actually really lovely. Okay, so this point actually has a few ways it can go. When you're making your character, it might be worth considering if you want your character to be linked to anyone else in your party pre your adventure starting. For example, maybe you and your friends were part of the same town guard, or maybe you were part of the same mercenary band, or you're just from the same place. Hell, maybe even your lovers, or maybe your enemies. Or maybe you don't know each other at all, and you're just a collection of perfect strangers, all gathered together for one job from which your adventures will potentially move into. Talking with other players will either help funnel or open up the directions you can take your character into, and it might help you determine your race, your class, maybe even your alignment. So talking to other players is pretty valuable. Alright, cool, you've got a world to fit or not fit into, and you've got a group of people you either know or you don't know. It's time to start working on the main feature. You. Okay, so goals. Everyone in life has a goal they want to strive towards, and that is the same with your characters. It can be as grandiose as being a well-renowned and loved hero, or it can be something just as specific as finding a certain person in a certain place. Your goal might be something that's sustained, something your character keeps up till their final days, or maybe something you even hit in the campaign, which may expand your character into new and interesting directions you either expected or never expected to take them into. The catalyst is what's driving your character to hit their goal. It could be that they saw great injustices that they seek to fix, or maybe they were cursed in an operation gone wrong and now the world is flipped upside down. Definitely not talking about that from experience. Or maybe, once again, it's just as simple as they wanted to become an adventurer and they've got a knack for it. Now, D&D actually has a really cool system and quick builds for helping building a character backstory through dice rolls, which, if you're stuck on ideas or just fancy seeing where fate takes you, is a perfectly fine and completely valid way to make a character. Nobody will think any ill of you, and if they do, then, well, you're playing with people who are kinda shitty, and they're probably not the people you should be playing with. Okay, so you've got an image in your head of what you're going for in terms of class, race, skills, all that kind of jazz. You've got your bones there, it's just time to flesh them up. That's a disgusting term, I'm never going to try and use that again. So without trying to make you sound egotistical or force you down this route, because honestly, some people play pen and paper games as a way of escaping their current lives, which, you know, that's entirely fair. In some cases, and a lot like pro wrestling, your character should inhabit some of your characteristics, especially if this is your first time playing a tabletop game. I'm not saying your character should explicitly just be you, but a cat with an axe, but it could be. The characteristics needn't especially all be good too. Flawed characters definitely have their place and it makes them more believable. You shouldn't be afraid to be a fuck up. This is a game where you're going to be rolling dice and a lot of it's going to be luck based. Fucking up is inevitable, and it's not a bad thing. Chances are though, you probably want to flesh further out from just yourself and add some characteristics of other characters, which hell yeah, you do that. For example, my current character Hireth is a warlock who, as opposed to actually seeking out a pact, was cursed after an operation went wrong. And even though he's been cursed with nightmares and a horrifying bout of amnesia, which may have come as part of a big possessive slant, he now has newfound powers with which he's trying to do some good. Now, whenever I've brought this character up to people, they've said he sounds an awful lot like Fjord from Critical Role, which, well, yeah, Fjord was actually a major inspiration for this character, alongside Artorias from Dark Souls and the main character from Unavowed. Oh, and also Kratos from God of War, because he uses an axe, and axes are rad. Thing is though, your inspirations don't need to be limited to just other existing characters. Maybe you've heard a piece of music and it's really inspired you to make a bard. Joke mildly intended. Or maybe you've seen some art that you might expand out into a character based on what you interpret. The many areas you can take inspiration from are huge, and no one is going to think any lesser of you for taking that inspiration. At some point, we've always wanted to be Luke Skywalker, or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or maybe, unconventionally, you want to be Giles. I know I want to be Giles. Let your inspiration run wild and take you to places, but at the end of the day, if you feel like you just want to play a character that is essentially you, but with a couple of spell slots, then that is perfectly fine, you do you. Your character should be someone that you can just slide into, not like that. Not like that. It's just up to you whether you want to add a few bumps and ramps. Alrighty then, we got our stories written, our goals realised, our inspirations found, and we got our character sheets and they're filled out with pluses and minuses. We're not all perfect. But what do we look like? Do we have an accent? This, to me, is one of the funnest parts of making a character. Regards voices, this is very much down to personal taste. Maybe your character has regional accents. Or maybe your character is from a different part of the world. Or maybe it's just your voice. There's no real wrong answer. You're going to be inhabiting this character and you need to be comfortable with it. Maybe you start applying a voice in later sessions because it can be quite scary putting on a voice in front of people for the first time. It's entirely up to you. There's no real wrong answer. Unless you're being racist, that is a wrong answer. Don't be a racist, no one likes them. Now, character looks is something I love to pieces. There's so many different approaches you can take, from googling fashions and looks, to maybe even just googling your race and class. If you're artistically talented, you could even draw your character. Or maybe you want to commission an artist to make a character look for you. That is also entirely viable. I'll drop a few links to artists who I really like in the description down below, and these are people I really think you should be checking out anyway. Or if you're like me, you can certainly give drawing your character a try. Maybe character creators may be a more viable option. Honestly, they're a great tool for helping visualize how you see your character. There's nothing wrong with dropping into a game or two to try and visualize and maybe eke out a character look in them. Some games I recommend for that are Skyrim, which covers most of your fantasy bases. Pillars of Eternity 2 as well also has a pretty neat character creator with some interesting takes on races. And there's also Soul Calibur 6, which certainly has its fair share of issues. But these games can certainly help. If you're looking for something a little more free, Hero Forge is definitely worth your time. I may have lost many an evening to Hero Forge. So you could make a dwarf with like a big axe and, you know, a scary face mask. Or you could be a robot and make that Warforged pirate you had stuck in your head. Or maybe you could be an elf with a gun. Or, wait, no, I've got to do an outro. Right, I could stay here forever and click on random outfits for characters in the vain hope that maybe one day I will play them. But for the meantime, that is my process for making a character for a tabletop RPG, and I hope you found it useful. You don't need to do all of these in the order you've seen it in the video, although I will admit maybe talking to your DM and your players first would be a good shout. But either way, I hope this has helped. It is relatively subjective, but you know, this is my process, and I thought it'd be interesting to share it with you guys. As I said at the start, I am no authority on this, and there's still so much to be covered, namely stats and the like, for which I actually highly recommend you check out the series Handbook a Helper on Critical Role's YouTube. It was one of the many factors that helped me build my Warlock, and it's also really helpful for building other characters that you might struggle with building, or maybe you just want a quick check-up on. There's other sources as well, which I'll link in the description, along with artist credits and other channels I think you should be checking out. If you have any tips on how to go about making your characters, be they more concept-based, or maybe even stat-based, why don't you let me know down in the comments below, and try to make sure that we keep a nice and friendly atmosphere here for beginners, because, well, you're all lovely anyway, and I'm hoping this is going to be a nice jumping off point for people to go about making their characters. Either way, it's been lovely to have you here, and if you stuck all the way through to the end, then, well, thank you. And I'll catch you all next time I make a video. Until then, just keep being lovely, yeah?